Today's daf in Masechet Bava Batra is Lamed Bet 32, and we are now in Cheskat Habatim. And during this last week, as we talked about last weekend, we lost our pirush from Rashi. So the pirush that we have on the inside of our daf is the Rashbam. The outside, of course, remains Tosfos. So the discussion yesterday, he said he got up to 8 lines from the bottom of Lamed Aleph Amud Bet. So Ditznan, basically. But basically, the discussion yesterday, which we're going to continue today, was a discussion about what to do if new evidence comes in, right? So if you have a case in Beit Din, you make a claim, there's a counterclaim, and then you update your claim, right? So we had that discussion about that you can't change your initial claim, basically. But then there was a separate question about what to do if more information comes. Is there such a thing as this concern for what's called ziluta de beidina, which literally translates as denigration of the opinions of Beit Din, so that sometimes we're worried that if Beit Din says something and then changes their mind, it will look bad. And so we had a discussion yesterday about whether that's a concern or not a concern. And yesterday, basically, we had a case of Rav Hamnuna, right? Sorry, a case of, Rav Hamnuna was part of it, where Rav Nachman basically
It was Rav Nachman and Rav Chisda, and then Rav Huna and who's the other one? The fourth one, Rava.
Right.
And which one held like the other one?
Correct. But yesterday we ended with Rav Nachman, and Rav Nachman Paskin basically we think that you're not concerned. And then we said, oh, I thought the last thing we had yesterday was I was going to act that way because we just quoted a Braita that seemed to support the concern about Ziluta de Beidina, right? But then the Gemara answered at the end of yesterday, which is what he got up to, Velohi. That in fact, when Rav Nachman paskined the case and changed the opinion, and he wasn't worried about Beit Din, it wasn't because he made a mistake. It was Mishum D'Italia Be'ashli Ravravi. And that's where we're up to. That he hung it on strong ropes, is literally what Ashli Ravravi means. Very strong ropes. Very good morning, Miriam. You made it up this early. So we're just about to get started. We're 8 lines from the bottom of Lamed Aleph Amud Bet, and we're trying to justify why Rav Nachman no longer seemed to care or be concerned about Ziluta de Beidina. And it's based on, as we call it, strong ropes, meaning very, very prominent earlier sources. It's not.
So we're saying that it was contempt of court. Ziluta de Beidina. So you're saying this is denigration? You mean the same thing?
Well, so denigration, okay, ziluta means contempt, the same thing, meaning that people will not respect the judge, the opinions of a court if they come to think that the court is being flippant. They decide this and they decide that, and they turn they change their opinion easily. So let's see. So, but the thing is that Rav Nachman actually ultimately felt that was not a concern, and it's based on the following Mishnah. It's not. And now we're going to start.
There can be appeals, right? I mean, it happens all the time in court. You get a decision and you go on to an appeal.
So let's see the cases and you'll see where it sort of fits in. It's true that you can appeal, but generally the thing about appeals, you have new information, right? And what's really the concern about Ziluta de Beidina is where Beit Din changes their mind, where it's not apparent to people why they changed their mind. And you start getting this feeling that it's arbitrary, right? That's the definition of Ziluta de Beidina, where people think, oh, Beit Din did that, today they feel like doing that, and therefore it's considered to be a challenge. So let's see today's case. It's not. The Mishnah, and this is quoting from a Mishnah that we had in Ketubot, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Ein ma'alin lekuna pi ed echad. Rabbi Yehuda said a statement that you don't appoint someone to say that they're officially in the kuna. Now, obviously, kuna had a lot of implications. One is marrying for yichus, but one is to getting truma, working in the Beit HaMikdash, if there was a Beit HaMikdash. If you have one person who says that, you can't be ma'aleh the kuna. Now, what does that mean? Right? Of course, you don't need any edim to prove that you're a Kohen. Says the Gemara, says the Mishnah continues, Amar Rebbe Elazar ein matai, and Rebbe Elazar is not arguing with Rebbe Yehuda. He's explaining Rebbe Yehuda. When is it true that you cannot be ma'aleh lekuna al pi ed echad b'makom sheyesh oririn, where you have a claim against this person being a Kohen? There is a rumor or a claim or a voice that goes out that says this person is not a Kohen. Now, his father was a Kohen. That's not in dispute. But his father might have married a grusha, which is prohibited, and the child of that grusha is not a Kohen, right? It's considered to be a halal, but not a Kohen. So there's there's a rumor that this kid is not from a proper marriage, and therefore he's not a Kohen, there you can be Ma'aleh al pi ein echad. Aval, the makom she'ein orin, but in a place where there's no orin, then Ma'alin l'kuna al pi ein echad. Then you can, if there's no orin, you can go l'kuna al pi ein echad. Now Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says, Mishum Rabbi Shimon ben Haskan, no, Ma'alin l'kuna al pi ein echad. Of course, the Gemara says that's the same thing. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, Hainu Rebbe Lazar, right? So what's the difference in Rebbe Lazar, who said that only when people argue can you not use one, but in other cases you can rely on one, and Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says you can rely on one. So what they both said, you can rely on one person.
Same
So
thing.
Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, Hainu Rebbe Lazar. It's Gemara's question. Well, maybe the difference between them is whether the person or the claim against you being a Kohen, against this person being a Kohen, is one aid or two aidim. Maybe irur chad ika benayo. Maybe the difference is whether if one person, which of course is not kosher edut, but one person questions the veracity of his kuhuna status, and that's a Reb Elazar Savar, maybe. We're going to see this is not what we say, but it may be. Reb Elazar holds irur chad, that if one person says, oh, this person's not a Kohen, then if another individual comes and says he is a Kohen, that person's not believed, right? Ein ma'alin l'kuna pi eid echad, even if only one says you're not a Kohen. And Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, the top of Lamed Bet Amud Aleph, Savar Iru Trey, that the only time we don't believe one witness is where you have two people saying he's not a Kohen. But if just one person says, oh, I hear he's not a Kohen, right? And another aide comes and says he is a Kohen, you believe the second one. Okay, now that seems to be the machloket, or might be the machloket. Ask the Gemara on top, the Amar Reb Yochanan, but Reb Yochanan stated, now we don't exactly know where Reb Yochanan said this, but probably about this Mishnah, Divrei HaKol ein irur pachot mishnayim. Everybody agrees that you never pay any attention to an irur. We are on the top of Daf Lamed Bet Amud Aleph, the second line. For those joining now, that Rabbi Yochanan said you never pay attention to some rumor unless two people can assert that rumor. Meaning, Irur Chad doesn't count. A person's born, if a person has a father who's a Kohen, they have a chazakah of being a Kohen. If one person comes and says, oh, I heard or I saw or I know that the father married a grusha, and he's a ben grusha, so he's not the status of a Kohen, that is insignificant. If two witnesses come, that's significant. But one witness is not significant, right? So the case has to be or Trey.
What's the difference between Rav Shimon Gamliel and Rav Yochanan? They both say Trey.
We're getting there. Rabbi Yochanan is, one second, we're getting there. Rabbi Yochanan's an Amora. He's not part of this discussion.
No, right? But you just brought him in. I'm a Rav Yochanan, Divrei HaKol, ein arei pachot mishnayim.
Rabbi Yochanan is saying about everybody agrees that there's no claim of an ir-or. You never change a person's chazakah if their father's a Kohen from being a Kohen unless two people claim that they're not. So if that's the case, both Rebbe Elazar, the Tana, and Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, the Tana, have to be talking about a case where it's or Trey. That's where they both came and said, Eid Echad is not enough. So the question goes back to our original question. What's the difference between them, right? What's the difference between Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon Gamliel? Ella, it must be, says the Gemara, the second line of Daf Lamed Bet Amud Aleph, that we're talking about a case of or Trey, where two people came. Again, the case says, person's born to his father who's a Kohen. He comes and says, I'm a Kohen, I want the Truma, I want to do everything. Two people come and say, but we have information that your father married a Grusha and you're not really a Kohen. Okay? But Hacha b'mayaskinan, the case is the following. Kigon, now I'll read that now inside what I just said. The machsakinan leba'avua dehai de Kohen. We have a chazakah, no one disputes that the father of this boy, this young man, or whoever he is, was a Kohen. Okay? So presumably the son will be a Kohen. But nafik aleh kala, a rumor went out based on at least two people, de ben grusha u ben chalutzo. That was actually not based on two people. This is just a rumor. The Rashbam says none of this is really necessary, but it's good for the case. The rumor goes out that he, in fact, although his father was a Kohen, his father married someone inappropriate, and he's the son of a grusha and a chalutza, so he's not a Kohen. Okay? Va'achtine. So we demoted him. We basically said, you have to prove that you're a Kohen. There's a rumor that you're not a Kohen. You can't act as a Kohen.
So do they want to say, he wants to say a Ben Grusha and a Ben Chulatza? Wouldn't it be either or?
No, either or, yeah, either or. V'ata eid echad v'amar de Kohen. Now, a one witness came and said, I don't know what you're talking about. I was there. The father married this woman. She was not a grusha. She was not a chalutza. He is a Kohen. Okay. So now you have a rumor and you have an Eid Echad. When you have a rumor, which is not Eidim, it's just a word that goes kol. We had a lot about in Ketubot, right? So now that you have one Eid, that's enough. Everybody agrees, as the Gemara said in Ketubot, that's enough. So askinu. So now they brought him back up, right? You go down and you go up in this hierarchy. He is now treated like a Kohen. We're 6 lines from the top. But now's where the Mishnah starts, basically. V'atu beitrei. Now 2 witnesses came, not a rumor, but 2 witnesses. V'amri, and they said, Ben grusha ben chalutzahu, or uchulatzahu. He's the son of an illicit relationship. So his father was a Kohen, but his mother was a divorcee or a chalutza. And so therefore, achtine. So they put him back down. Now they say he's no longer a Kohen. He can't get the first aliyah. The Ata, now what happened was an Eid Echad came and said to Kohenhu. So this is when we say Ma'alin lekuna pi Eid Echad, right? Or I'm sorry, you're not ein Ma'alin lekuna pi Eid Echad. That was in this long scenario where he started off as a son of a Kohen. There's a rumor that challenges that, but we bring one aide who says he is a Kohen, so he's treated as a Kohen. But then 2 witnesses come and say he's not a Kohen, so he gets demoted because 2 is greater than 1. But then a second witness comes and says he is a Kohen. Okay.
It's 2 against 2.
So if it's 2 against 2, then basically they neutralize each other. And his original chazakah is that his father was a Kohen, so he's a Kohen, right? The real question is there, so we're now says the Gemara, Dekuli Alma, we think, we think that according to everybody, mitzdarfin edut, that you can combine the 2 people. Right? The first individual said he's a Kohen. 2 said he's not. The 4th one said he is. So it's 2 against 2. The hacha. So why in the world would anyone say that he's not a Kohen? Because here, the question here is the fundamental question we talked about yesterday. This looks really bad for Beit Din, right? Because you're saying he's a Kohen. Then you're saying he's not a Kohen. Now you're saying he is a Kohen. So it looks like they're very unsure about what they're saying. So hacha, the meichosh l'ziluta de beidina kamiflagi. Machloket is whether you have to worry about denigrating the psak of the Beit Din. The Rebbe Lazar savar. Look, says Rebbe Lazar, kivan da'achdine. Since we took him down based on the 2 witnesses, lo maskina le. Even when the 4th witness comes and it's 2 and 2, because chashina l'ziluta de beidina. Because it looks like ziluta de beidina. Now, part of the reason we're worried about that is that the 4th guy who came was one person. So someone who only sees part of the event will see, oh, there's 1 witness that comes. Now, we don't think you should go against one witness against 2. They don't necessarily know, right, that's because of the original one is being added. So the person will think Beit Din is just acting arbitrarily. And so Rebbe Lezer says 1 is not enough because of Ziluta de Beit Din, right? And Reb Shimon Gamliel says, no, that's not the case. This is not a case of Ziluta de Beit Din because Ananachtine, people will say, we, the Beit Din, made him go down, meaning we're the ones who made him not a Kohen. And we're the ones who make him a Kohen. You don't worry that people are going to denigrate Beit Din. They're going to understand Beit Din's got its reasons. There's new evidence, and that's why they're treating him like a Kohen. So again, we're not done yet. Don't worry. This makes it sound like there's a machloket tanaim between Rav Elazar and Rav Shimon Gamliel, specifically about this question, about not the underlying question here. There's 2 against 2. The guy should be a Kohen. But the question is, are you worried about Ziluta de Beit Din? Matkifla Rav Ashi, to ask Rav Ashi in that explanation, if that is the way you understand the Mishnah, my Yachad. So why in the world do you have this complicated case where 1 witness comes and says he's a Kohen, 2 come and say he's not a Kohen, the 4th one comes and says he is a Kohen, right? So now it's 2 plus 2. Just have a regular case. 2 witnesses come and say he's not a Kohen. The Beit Din says you're not a Kohen. Then 2 people show up and say he is a Kohen. Now he is a Kohen. According to Rav Elazar, you still have to worry about Ziluta de Beit Din because it went up and down. So Afilo betray Nami. Elam Rav Ashi, says Rav Ashi, and this is why we're bringing it, the Kuli Ama Lo Chashina Ziluta de Beit Din. It turns out that all of the Tanaim in this Mishnah do not worry about Ziluta de Beit Din. You can say he's a Kohen, the next day say he's not a Kohen, next day say he is a Kohen, and people will understand that the court changes their opinion based on new information. That is not a bad thing to do. It's a good thing to do. So the whole idea of Ziluta de Beidina, which is why at the end of the day yesterday, Rav Nachman Paskin not to worry about Ziluta de Beidina, because these Tanaim don't matter. They don't care. All of them, right? Rabbi Lazar and Rabbi Shimon Gamliel. So what are they arguing about? Hacha b'letzaref edut kamifligi. The machloket here is a whole different machloket, which is, can you combine two witnesses? Right? Witness A, the first witness came and said he's a Kohen. Two witnesses showed up and said he's not a Kohen, so we demoted him. A fourth witness came and said he is a Kohen. Can you combine number 1 and number 4? And that's a machloket tanaim.
Is there a time frame here? I mean, if it's a week later, okay, but if it's 10 years later, the guy comes back. I mean,
no, it's a good question. There's no time frame. I mean, Ziluta de Beidina by definition means after they make one psak, right? If they're having deliberations, and of course there's no question of Ziluta de Beidina, it's a discussion. But it means they close the book, they announced so-and-so is not a Kohen. Even 1 day later, 5 years later, 10 years later, whatever it is, they can change their mind. But it's beplukta, where 8 lines from the bottom, it's beplukta dahani tanai. It's related to the machloket of the following tanaim. Ditanya. There's a braita which says the following. And this is in Sanhedrin, and we're going to have it in a little bit, I guess, next Masechta. It's going to be a couple of months. But the Tanya. The Braita says, and this first part of the Braita is not relevant for our discussion, but we're going to read it because it's a full Braita. The Olam, the rule always is that Ein Edutan Mitztarefet Achir Shneim Ke'echad. You need to have two witnesses. You cannot combine two witnesses unless they see it together. For example, if let's say one witness shows up and says, Ruvain owes Shimon $100. I saw on Sunday Ruvain lend $100 to Shimon. A second witness shows up and says, I didn't see Ruvain lend $100 to Shimon, but on Tuesday, Shimon told me that he owes Ruvain $100. So the net effect of the two witnesses is that Ruvain lent $100 to Shimon and he owes him $100. But they're testifying about different things, right? One saw the loan, one he admitted it to. So they're not saying that they saw the same event. Says our Mishnah that doesn't count, the Braita, that they're not mitzdarif because they didn't see the same thing. They're testifying to two different events. Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha says it's not true. Even if they're testifying about different events, sorry, take it back. Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha is unrelated to the first part. Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha says, even if one witness comes right in front of the other witness, their edut is not mitzdaref unless they come together. Meaning, if one comes in the morning and one comes in the evening and they testify to the same event, says Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha, their edut does not count, which means if one came and said he's a Kohen, two came and said he's not, and a fourth one came and said he's a Kohen, you will not combine number 1 and number 4.
But you said a few minutes ago, there's no time frame. He could come at 10
minutes later. That's what we assumed. Now we're saying that's the machloket. Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha says they have to come together. Rabbi Natan Omer, 4 lines from the bottom, no, there's no reason to say that. Shomin dvarav shel zeh hayom. You listen to one aid today. When the next one comes tomorrow, shomin dvarav, you listen to him. And so Rabbi Natan says, which is the opinion of Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, that you can combine them, that there is no such limitation on edut. And that, it turns out, is the machloket Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. Everyone agrees that we don't worry about ziluta de beidina, which is why Rav Nachman paskin not to worry. But the machloket is whether or not, in this complicated case, if one witness came, then two, and then a fourth one showed up, so he's only one, can you combine him with the first one or not combine him with the first one? That's the whole machloket between the two of them. Now, 2 lines on the bottom, let's get back to our cases. So it's a new case. If anyone didn't follow that one, follow this one. Ahu da'amar lechavri. There was a person who came to.
So there's no maskana here then with that, is there?
No. The maskana yesterday was Rav Nachman said, about whether you combine the witnesses? No,
yes.
No maskana. That we'll get to when we get to Sanhedrin, as the Rashbam says. There's a lot to talk about in Sanhedrin. We don't hear it in Sanhedrin because it's not the Rashbam. But that we'll discuss there. But the maskana of our Gemara is that you don't worry about ziluta de beidina.
But we don't know about mitzdarfim edut.
Correct. That is not our sugya, as he puts it. Hahuda Amr Lechavre. Now, one person, again, I don't know if you guys used names last week, but it helps me to use names, right? Reuven comes to Shimon. Let's say Shimon is sitting on the land. Reuven shows up from a 3-year trip to Alaska, 2-year trip, we're going to say. And he says to Shimon, "My ba'it b'hai ara. What are you doing in my land? Why are you here? This is my land." Amarle, so Shimon, we're going to call him the squatter in this case, says, Minach zavinte. What do you mean? I bought it from you. Now, it turns out he didn't have proof that he lived there for 3 years, so he does not have a chazakah. But he says, I got something better than a chazakah. I have a star, the hashtara. I have a document that says Ruvain sold this land to Shimon, and Shimon, whatever. So that I have proof that you sold it to me. Amar Le, Ruvain looks at him, he says, what are you talking about? I never met you before in my life. Shtara zaifu. That is a false star. Okay. Now, the star is false. Okay, so you don't have proof that you have a chazakah. You don't have proof that you've been there for 3 years. So get off my land. So now they go to the court, and the second guy, Shimon, the squatter, who's living there now, Gachin, he bends down, Lachishle the Rabbah, and he whispers to Rabbah, who's the judge there. He doesn't want to tell him what he doesn't want the other person to hear what he's about to say. And he says, the truth is in. Yes, the truth is Shtara Zaifo. The truth is that it's a false star. Now, the Rashbam understands, not like Tosfot, that this doesn't mean it's literally a false star. It means it's not a perfect star, meaning that it's a miu. Let me read the inside. Miu, however, shtara ma'al yahavili. I had a good star. I, Shimon, had a star that really, really proved that he sold me this land, right? And it's true. I'm not making this up. I had a good star, but I lost it. V'irchas. And I mislaid it. So it got lost from me. Okay. Excuse me. And then what I did was I said, in good high biyadai koldu. I'm going to take this star, which it turns out is again, I'm using the word false star because that's what the Mishnah said, but I'll explain the Rashbam in a second. I took this star because it's basically a replica of the star that he really owes me, of the star he really had. Now, Rashbam explains that it doesn't mean that it's a false star. What it means is that it's not a legitimate star from the sale. And it's a kind of thing, remember, we had this earlier a lot of times already, where you write what's called a star amana. A star amana is a star that is not a star that testifies to the sale, but it's a star that you write after the fact that says that everybody agrees to the facts of what happened, that Ruvain sold a field to Shimon. Now, it turns out that a star amana is not good enough to collect with. The reason being, remember, the key thing in a star is that the land is mishubad from that time, right? So star is very, very important because a voice goes out with star, and everyone who sold property, if he had loans at that time, right, you'd be able to take that property to collect for those loans. A star amana is basically a star that's almost a replica of a star, but does not have the effect of a star. So you cannot use a star amana to collect. And so basically what he said to Rabbah is, look, this is not the real star. But so that's why the word mizuyaf is a strong word because it literally means false. But this is not the real star. It's a sort of after the fact kind of star. And because I lost the original star, I'm presenting this and I'm making my claim. But really, I bought the land from that person. So says Rabbah, Amar Rabbah, Rabbah said, what do I do in this case? Ma li the shaker. You believe Shimon. You believe the guy squatting on the land. Because remember, we have this concept called migu, meaning why would he lie? If he wanted to lie, he could have said something totally different. He could have just said, it's a good star. So this is where the Rashbam points out, what do you mean he could have said it's a good star? It must be that the people who signed the star really signed it, right? If you go to validate the signatures, which is how you prove a star, it's a good star, right? No one can prove that it's not a good star. So I could have lied. If I wanted to lie, Ibai Amar Le Shtar Ma'ayu. I could have just said this is a good star and not admitted anything. I felt guilty and I admitted to the court that really it's not, but it was a good transaction. But I could have just lied along the way. So clearly I'm not a liar. Amalei Rav
So
Yosef.
that's where he says Ha'edim Sha'ari Ha'edim Mechirim Chatimat Yedehem.
Correct. Yeah. That again, the response is a few pshatim, but that's the easiest one. Is that if you go to the witness and say, "Did you sign this?" Right, or they're dead, let's say, but you have other things that they signed, you'll validate the signatures, right? Because it really was their signature. So that's the one pshat. He has other pshatim, as you probably read in the Rashbam, that in fact
Well, I
maybe
can't read as fast as you're talking, but I get a few things. Yeah.
Well, okay, good. Afterwards, there's always time after. Anyways, that was what Rabbah said. So Rabbah said, "I trust this guy because he is amigo." Amar le Rav Yosef said, Rav Yosef, "Amai samachta hai shtara." I don't get it. How can you rely on this star? We have established hai shtara chasba ba'almo. This star is just a piece of junk, right? It's not real. He admitted that this is not real. right? Chasba always means like a piece of pottery, right? It's just basically a worthless piece of material because it's not a star, just a piece of paper. So now, what does that mean? So the Rashbam explains, and we're going to do another case in a second where we repeat it, that this is not a regular migu, of course, because a regular migu, for example, I'm just going to throw out an example. Person comes to someone else and says, "You owe me $200," right? And the guy says, "I only owe you 100." So you could have a migu maybe there where I could have said, if I wanted to lie, I could have said, "I owe you nothing," right? I admitted to owing you 100. So if you can assume I'm not a liar, because if I wanted to lie, I would have had a better lie, let's just say, right? Now, of course, we threw out that migu in Bava Metzia, public commissary because people feel guilty about lying. But either way, right? That's amigo, where I said to you, I owe you 100. I could have also said I owe you nothing, right? And Mali the Shaker, either one could have been true. But here, what do you mean? What's the migo, right? The migo is that if I had said to you that this is, if I wanted to lie, I would have said it's a good star. But I've already told you it's not a good star. And the fact that I told you it's not a good star, this is the equivalent of migo b'makom edim, right? You already, and so that's how the Rashbam quotes it, is that the hodat baldin, the admission of a person is kamea edim. You've admitted that this is not a good star. So you've established those facts. So because of that, you lose your migo, says Rav Yosef, because since you've told us it's not real, it's true that now it's potential you could have lied about something else, right? But we basically are going up. We know the star is chas b'balma. We know it's nothing, and you no longer have a migo that utilizes this star. So
But
therefore,
didn't we say that he had the Chatimat Edim that from before?
yeah, but
So
it's not
then
a
he
good
had the
star.
Edim. What?
No, remember this, like I said, it's a star that they wrote afterwards, right? So it doesn't count. It's a star that's just there to prove something happened. It doesn't count for the act. It's not a way to prove ownership. And so therefore, says Rav Yosef, the star does not work because you admitted that it's false. Therefore, you have no claim to the land. Everyone established that Reuven used to live here. You live here now, Shimon. You claim you bought it. You have no proof. Get off the land. Goes
But
back
what
to
was the Edim before? The concept that where Rashbam said Chatimat Edim that he had that he then we could verify the Edim that they actually signed the bill of sale, but he had to create a new one because it was lost. So there was Edim initially, right? He said
there. What? No, sorry. We don't have Adam initially. We have Adam now to this star, which is a false star. The star was
Edim on the
not.
false star.
You've Adam on the false star, but the only way to know it's a false star is through his admission. If he hadn't admitted that it was a false star, there'd be no way to know that because the Adam really signed it. They really checked out. Excuse me. So that's why we rely on him to say it's false. But what Reb Yochanan, sorry, Reb Yosef is saying is that, excuse me, Reb Yosef is saying is that once we have established as proof that it's a false star, you no longer can use that as part of your migo.
Why would the Edim sign a false star? I mean, how could he convince them then the Edim are false too?
So no, it could be that Ruvain actually, it could be, so there could be the Edom are false, of course, that is possible. But it could also be that after the fact, there's what's called a shtar amana, shtar that says this transaction happened, that all the parties are agreeable that it happened. But such a shtar is not something you can use to prove ownership.
Right, but if the Edim signed a false star, where did it then?
Again,
The original owner wasn't even involved in this, so
no,
that's all
so
made up then.
listen, I'll say it again, but it's the same thing I said. It's not a fault. It's a star that everyone in every party, Ruvain and Shimon and the Edom agreed to sign after the fact. So it was not at the time that Ruvain sold the field to Shimon. It was a later time. Shimon lost that star, let's say, right? And he came to these witnesses in the presence of Ruvain and said, "Can you sign a document that says Ruvain sold this field to me on such and such date?" And the witnesses signed the document. They're real witnesses. It's fact. It happened. But that is not a star that we're able to use to collect because only a star that's written at the time of the bill of sale is what's something we can use to collect.
But if that's the case, then Ruvain agrees, so to speak, that the land was sold. He because if he's there in their presence and has Adam and Adam are signing the star on between Ruvain and Shimon, then Ruvain says, "But yeah, I sold it to you. Maybe I didn't sell it. Maybe the star is a new star, but I still sold you the land." So he
Right. So,
agrees.
so again, I don't want to get into it, but that star is not enough. It's written the way I described it to collect the land. If Ruvain later denies it. So according to Rabba, you have a amigo. Even though you said the star is false, you could have lied and said it was real, and we would have established it. So we trust you that you own the land. According to Rav Yosef, we don't trust you. There was another case. We are now 7 lines from the top. Hahud Amar Lechavre, another case, a very similar case, where a person said to his friend, Reuven said to Shimon, Havli me'azuzi, give me $100, the masikna becha, which I lent to you, right? And I have proof that I lent you $100, Reuven says to Shimon, because hach shtara. I have a star. It says Reuven lent Shimon $100. Amalei, Shimon said to Reuven, star is Zaifu. I don't know what you're talking about. This star is false. You made a false star. I want you to establish it. So now, Gachin, so again, the same idea. He bent down, Lachish le the Rabbah, and he whispered to Rabbah, yes, the truth is exactly what Reuven said. Star is Zaifu. It is a false star, just like the previous case. Miu, however, the truth is, Star Ma'al Yahavili, I had a good star when we initially lent him money, the Irchas, and I lost that one. The Amina, and so I said, look, I'll take this false one. Inkat Hai Biyade, called you. So at least I have something that basically will seem to imply that this is true. And I thought he wouldn't he wouldn't deny it. So in the same exact case, basically, Amar Rabba said, okay, well, you trust Shimon. Because since Shimon has a star in his hand that by all accounts looks like a good star, and it would hold up to the scrutiny of court, he could have just lied. He could have said, this is the real star. The fact that he admitted to me in private that it's not a real star, I don't trust the star anymore, but I trust him because he's got a migo. Mali the shaker. So you say, why would he lie? If he wanted to, Amar, he could have said, the Bach takes out the word lay, Amar could have said, star ma'ayu. He could have said it's a good star. And so since it's the exact same thing Rabbi said before, and Amali Rav Yosef says, Rav Yosef, I disagree. You cannot rely on the star. Amaika Samchet, what are you relying on right now? A high star, on this star? High star, Chasba Ba'amu. You've already proven that this star, because he admitted that this star is bogus. And so since this star is bogus, it only counts like a piece of paper, not like a document, and therefore it doesn't count at all. There is no proof. We have an open case. You can prove he owes you $100, but until you can prove that he owes you $100, he doesn't owe you anything. And said Raviti Bar Avin, now the middle of the daf, you know what, says Raviti Bar Avin? The reason we brought two cases is because the halacha is different in the two cases. No, Rabbah disagrees in both cases. In both cases, Rabbah holds you have amigo, and therefore you collect or get your property back. And Rav Yosef in both cases holds that there's no migo, right? But halacha is kavatei de Rabbah be'ara. We pass like Rabbah with the land. That when Reuven comes to Shimon and says, you're living in my land, and Shimon says, what are you talking about? I've got a star. Turns out it's a false star. But still, Shimon has a migo and he gets to stay in the land. The hilchata kavatei de Rav Yosef bezuzi. And halacha is like Rav Yosef with zuzi. That if a person says, Reuven says to Shimon, you owed me money, right? And I have a star that proves it. And Shimon says, I don't owe you money. And then Reuven admits the star is false, right? There we pass into Rav Yosef that Reuven cannot use the star to collect from Shimon. And of course, the reason is Hilchada Kiraba Be'ara, because it's Shimon is the one who's in the land. So if Reuven wants to take you off the land, he has to prove, right, that he can take you off the land. Shimon is living in the land. Shimon basically gets to stay there until you prove that he doesn't get to stay there. But basically, it's uncertain. So the person who has chazakah is the one who stays. In the land case, Reuven came to Shimon and said, get off my land. Shimon said, I had a star. Turns out it's a false star, but he has a migo, and therefore we pass him like Rabbah. Hilchata kavatei Rav Yosef bezuzi, but the halacha is like Rav Yosef when you talk about the money case, because the heicha dekai mezuzi dekumi. Right? Reuven comes to Shimon and says, I lent you $100, and here's the star. But there, you can't use that star to collect $100 because you claim it's a false star. And so therefore, we don't know is problem. But the bottom line, we don't really know how to paskin about this case. So we go in the middle and we basically say whoever is in the property or has the money gets to keep it. And that's where we conclude.
But I cast aspersions on the owner of the supposedly original owner of the land, because if he agreed to signing this false star and then he backs out on it, granted, I mean, he says, what are you doing on my land? But he agreed at that time. Adam said he signed it. Now he says, no, I want my land back. You could cast aspersion on, and maybe he's not such a nice guy. He sold it, and I says, no, I didn't really sell it, but he signed something.
You could cast aspersion, but that's the question is whether that's halachic proof or not, right? So,
but in the end, he doesn't get his land back. But in the bottom line,
Correct. At
But
least
but but
according,
but but I'm
according to our
thinking,
halacha, according to
what?
Rav Yosef, he would get his land back, but according to our halacha, he doesn't. According to
So
Rabbi,
then maybe they think the same way. That listen, who's this guy? He signed it. He signed the so he agreed to sign that false start with Adam. So
it
that's
could
his
be,
problem.
but yeah, it could very well be. Let's do the last case at the two dots, 10, 15 lines from the bottom. This is a little bit of a complicated case, but we're going to make it very simple. Hahu arva. Okay, there was an arev. An arev is a guarantor. So the case I'm gonna use again. I hope these names are easy for everyone. Ruvain lent Shimon $100, and Levi signed the loan. And the loans that Levi signed says if Shimon doesn't pay back the money, I'm gonna pay back the money. Right? I'm the guarantor. Levi's the guarantor. So Hahu arva. There was a guarantor. The Amar le lilova. So he goes to Shimon, the borrower, and he says, Havli me'azuzi. You owe me $100. De parati lemalveh alayich. I paid Ruvain, the lender, for you. And the proof that I paid him is hashtara. I'm holding on to the star. And the star says Ruvain lent Shimon $100 and Levi is the guarantor. So Ruvain couldn't find you. You didn't pay him back. You ran away. So Ruvain came to me and I paid him, and Ruvain gave me the star, right? Which is proof that I paid. So now you have to pay me. Amar le, so he said, so Shimon said to Levi, what do you mean I owe you $100? Lav peraticha, I paid you back the $100. Okay. It's true. I borrowed money from Ruvain. I didn't pay Ruvain back. Levi paid for me. Shimon said, but I paid you back, Levi. Amar, so Levi said back to him, it's true that you paid me back. And therefore, remember, whenever you pay the money, you get the star. So Shimon paid Levi the money. Shimon got the star. But then he said to Levi, you know what? Can I borrow another $100? And I don't want to write a new star. There was no sofer. There was no activity. Take this star back. And it basically proves I owe you $100. So so Levi said back, La fadarta shakilta minai. You took it back from me a second time, right? Meaning you gave it back to me. So I lent you the money again. So basically, this star was worth my ability, Levi said, to collect from you from Shimon, $100. You wanted to borrow a new $100 from me, you gave me the star. Now, just like the previous case, this is not accurate, right? It's not a proof. A star that says Reuven lent Shimon money and Levi's a guarantor is not a way for Levi to lend money to Shimon, right? But Levi basically was trusting this guy and he short-circuited it and he relied on this star, which really is not the right star to rely on.
So
So
what
that's
happened again? They say that Levi lent Shimon money after the, is that he lent
correct.
another 100?
Correct. Shimon paid Levi back the $100. So Levi was a guarantor. Levi paid back Ruvain and got the star.
Right.
Then Shimon paid Levi, and Levi gave the star to Shimon. So now everyone's equal. But then Shimon said to Levi, I really need $100. Let me borrow the $100 from you again, and I'll give you back the star to hold on to, which will be proof that I owe you $100. Okay? So after 30 days, Levi came back to Shimon and said, okay, time to pay me back. And Shimon said, I already paid you back. He says, I have a star. He said, but that star is something I gave back to you. But I don't, everyone agrees to these facts. Okay. So says the Gemara, Sholcha Ravidi Barav in the Kameda Abaya. Ravidi Barav sent this question to Abaya, Ki Hagavna Mai, what's the halacha? Shalach le Abaya. So Abaya said, Mighty Baile, right? Why are you asking me this question? This is the exact same case, basically, of the previous case. Because here you have a star that really doesn't prove that Shimon owes Levi money, right? But it's a kosher star. And on the face of it, the star, if you verified the star, meaning if Levi denied that Shimon ever paid him back, Levi is holding on to a star that says Shimon's going to owe him $100. Levi can go into court and say, this is a kosher star. Shimon never paid me back. He can lie. And this star would be useful for him to get Shimon to pay back. Now, instead, he told the truth. He said, Shimon did pay me back. And this star is something he gave back to me because I lent him a new $100. So why isn't that the same migo? And we said earlier, he said back to him, this is the case where Ihu Amar, you yourself said, Hilchata Kavate, de Rabba Be'ara, you pass like Rabba in land, Hilchata Kavate, de Rav Yosef Bezuzi, right? You pass like Rav Yosef with money, and here, the Hecha de Ukmi Zuzi Lukmi. Wherever the money is, the money is. Shimon has the $100. He doesn't have to pay back Levi because although Levi has a migo, that if I wanted to lie, I could have just said this is a good star and you never paid me back. Rav Yosef said earlier that you don't have a migo in that scenario, and that's how we paskin when it comes to money.
Do we know Levi's not lying here?
About what?
That there's another star. that Shimon owes me money. That he
Why would Levi have the star if Shimon didn't owe him money?
no,
yeah,
he's saying he said yes, he paid me back, but now we had another star. Craig gave me another star. There's another time, and he owes me money a second time. Well, maybe he's lying.
right, but why would he have the star then? That's the whole
God
point.
knows why he has the star. I mean, I didn't hear what you're saying, but I mean, there could be a lot of monkey business going back and forth
Yeah, so
because
that's exactly
Shimon
what Mali
says
the
there was
Shaker is.
we didn't have a sulfur create a star. So I mean,
That's exactly what Mali the Shaker is. Correct. That why would you, if you wanted to lie, you could lie. You're holding on to the facts, right? But we said in this case that we poskin that although you have a migu, this migu doesn't count. So that's the halacha. However, says the Gemara, Hani Mili, that's only true. The Amar Le, it's only true where Levi claimed and said, Hadart Oziftinu Minai, that look, Shimon, you paid me back, I admit. But then I lent money to you a new time. And so because Levi's claims I lent money to you a new time, he's basically saying the star that speaks about the first loan that I'm holding on to is really not relevant for the second loan. Aval Amr Le, but if what happened was that Shimon came to Levi and said, look, thank you for paying back my loan to Ruvain. Here is money to pay you back, right? But Levi gets the payment from Shimon and he says, wait a second, this is not good payment. You're giving me coins that are garbage, right? Hadratino nihilach. I want to give these coins back to you. Machmat tahavi shaifi. Shaifi means that they're red or something, meaning that Rashi explains, or Rashbam, sorry, explains that when coins get worn out, they like copper starts changing colors. So they're not good quality. Or sumki. Sorry, sumki is red. So shaifi means that they're worn away, that they're rolled over, like you wore it down. So if Levi says to Shimon, look, you paid me back, but then I came to you and said, the payment you gave me is not good. I want better payment. Here's your money back. Give me my star back. Then akati ita l'shibude de star. That's not a new loan, right? That's the original loan that Ruve made to Shimon. Shimon was trying to pay back Levi with garbage money. And Levi basically said, that's not good enough money for me. In which case, even though the transaction happened the same way, Shimon gave the money to Levi. Levi gave Shimon the star. Levi came back to Shimon and said, I don't like this anymore. You gave me, not anymore. I don't like the money you gave me. I was able to look at it. Here's your money back. Give me my star. When you get good money, pay me back, right? In that case, it's actually not a new loan. It's that you never discharged the loan that happened, and everyone would agree that it is a kosher star and that it really testifies to the original loan from Reuven to Shimon, and Levi can collect based on that star.
and
That is
everyone agrees that, and then everyone would agree that that's what happened. Even Shimon would agree to that.
correct. As long as everyone is right, as long as there's no debate about that, or there were witnesses, let's say, yeah. Tomorrow, we're going to continue 4 lines from the bottom with Rava Bar Sharsham. It's a pretty short daf. The dafim get pretty short after a bit, right? But we will easily finish it. It's also a very interesting case tomorrow morning. So stay tuned for another case of cases, complications, and migos. I will see you all, God willing, tomorrow morning at 7:45 a.m. American time. You're going to make it, Miriam? Few short hours?
No, I'm not going to.
Okay,
I'll be somewhere else, so it's going to be more complicated.
okay,
So,
we'll miss you tomorrow, but hopefully see you again
thank
next week.
you.
So Shavua Tov,
Okay.
everyone. See you tomorrow morning.
Shavua Tov.
Good night.
$9.25.